The morning my son-in-law used a copied key to open my workshop, he had no idea the blue folder he photographed had been placed there for him. I was 68 years old, retired, and sitting less than 30 feet away in the upstairs guest room with the blinds half closed and a security alert glowing on my phone. Ryan believed I was across town meeting an old client for breakfast. I had even backed my truck out of the driveway at 7:15, driven around the block, parked behind my neighbor's hedge with his permission, and walked home through the side gate. I did that because 3 days earlier Ryan had repeated a number he could not possibly have known unless he had been reading my private property records. A place assessed at $874,000 ought to be doing more for the family than collecting rent, he had said while helping me replace a porch light. I had never told him the county assessment on my duplex. I had never told my daughter either. My daughter knew I owned a small rental property in Richmond, Virginia, because she had grown up helping me paint its porch rails every summer. But she had no reason to know the parcel number, the assessed value, or the amount of equity. Ryan smiled when I looked at him. Public records, Dad. I'm in construction. I look at property all day. Maybe. But 2 weeks before that, I had found my annual tax notice on the kitchen counter with the envelope slit open. I had placed it unopened beneath a grocery circular before going out for coffee. When I came home, the circular was still there, and the tax notice had been opened neatly enough that someone probably expected me to think I had done it myself. Then I received a credit monitoring alert, showing an inquiry from a commercial lender I had never contacted. That was when I stopped asking myself whether I was being suspicious and started checking facts. I froze my credit, called the lender to say I had not applied for anything, asked my attorney to place an alert on the title of the duplex, moved my original deed and insurance records to a bank box, and installed a camera inside my own detached workshop. I did not accuse Ryan. I did not call my daughter and tell her I thought her husband was trying to steal from me. My daughter had been married to him for 6 years, and if I went to her with a feeling, he could turn my concern into an attack on their marriage before I had one piece of evidence she could verify for herself. So I gave him something to find. The blue folder on my workbench contained no real deed and no usable authorization. It held a draft property summary I had created with my attorney and a deliberately unusual reference to an imaginary cedar annex provision, language that did not exist in any real document connected to my property. If Ryan never entered the workshop, nothing happened. If he entered only to borrow a tool, the folder still meant nothing. But if he opened it, photographed it, and later repeated something from those pages, I would know exactly where his information came from. At 8:06 that morning, the door sensor notified me. Ryan appeared on the camera holding a brass key I had never given him. He stepped inside, closed the door, walked past my drill press and tool cabinets without looking at either one, and went directly to the workbench. He opened the blue folder. He photographed every page. Then he opened 2 drawers and checked the metal file box where I used to keep closing documents. He was in there for 6 minutes. I watched every second. The hardest part was not calling my daughter. The hardest part was remembering that she deserved proof, not my anger. Ryan left the folder almost exactly where he had found it, locked the door behind him, and drove away. 10 minutes later, I walked downstairs, made coffee, and saved the video in 3 places. At 9:14, my daughter called. "Dad, are you free Friday afternoon?" she asked. "Depends. Ryan has a meeting with a lender about a new commercial project. He thinks it could finally get the company out of the hole from that warehouse job." That was the first time anyone in the family had admitted there was a hole. "What kind of lender?" I asked. She hesitated. "Private commercial. I don't really know. Ryan handles the business side." "And why do they need me?" There was a little silence. "He said you might be able to help with collateral." I looked through the window toward the workshop. "Did he tell you what collateral?" "No. He said it was just paperwork and nothing would happen without your approval." I took a slow drink of coffee. "Tell my son-in-law I'll be there." She laughed with relief. "I knew you'd help us." I did not correct her. "Sweetheart," I said. I said I'd be there. I didn't say what I'd sign. My daughter had always been the person who assumed the best until the facts physically blocked the door. As a child, She once spent 2 weeks feeding a stray cat behind our garage because she was convinced its owner would return. In college, she loaned a roommate nearly all the money from her summer job because the roommate said her mother needed surgery. The mother did not need surgery. My daughter eventually got half the money back and blamed herself for asking questions too late. Ryan had seemed different when she brought him home. He was not flashy. He owned a small remodeling company, arrived in an old pickup with paint on the door handles, and spent half of Thanksgiving repairing a loose stair rail I had been ignoring. He called me sir for a year, even after I told him to stop. When my wife was dying, Ryan drove my daughter to Richmond every other weekend without complaint, and once slept in a hospital chair because every hotel nearby was full. Those things mattered to me. They still mattered after I began to distrust him. That was what made the situation painful. A liar is easy to hate when every memory of him is rotten. Ryan was harder. He had been generous before he became desperate, and I believe that is why my daughter did not recognize the exact moment desperation turned into entitlement. About 18 months before the workshop incident, his company won the renovation of a small medical office complex outside Henrico. The job was bigger than anything he had handled before. He hired too fast, underbid electrical work, and got trapped when material prices rose after the contract was signed. He told us the project had been difficult, but profitable. My daughter repeated that sentence whenever I asked why Ryan looked exhausted. Then the changes started. He began asking whether I still carried a mortgage on my house. He wondered whether rental properties could be refinanced without selling them. He asked how quickly a private lender could record a lien. Every question had a professional explanation. Contractors talk about financing. Contractors study property. Contractors know what collateral means. Then he began offering to simplify things for me. He could put my rentals into a management company. He could organize my tax records. He could scan my closing papers in case there was ever a fire. I told him I had managed my own property for 39 years and planned to continue. He never argued. That should have reassured me, except he always found a different door. One Sunday, my daughter said, "Ryan thinks you're carrying too much by yourself." A month later, she said, "Ryan says the duplex could probably generate more if you renovated both units." Later, she asked whether I had ever considered putting her name on the property just in case. None of those questions made me angry. What bothered me was that my daughter rarely talked about real estate before she married a contractor. I began paying more attention. The second warning came when Ryan borrowed my truck because his was in the shop. My workshop key was on the same ring. He had the truck for 3 hours. The next week, the workshop lock felt rough. I removed the cylinder and found tiny fresh marks around the pins. A locksmith told me someone might simply have used a poorly cut duplicate. He could not prove it. I changed the lock and said nothing. Ryan noticed within days. "New lock?" he asked while standing in my driveway. Old one was sticking. "You should have called me. I've got a guy. I've got a guy too." His smile stayed in place, but he glanced toward the key in my hand. That evening, I ordered the door sensor and camera. 2 days later, the open tax notice appeared. Then came the lender inquiry. By the time Ryan entered the workshop, I was not waiting for a reason to distrust him. I was waiting to understand what he intended to do with the information. My daughter made that harder because she was already protecting him without realizing it. On Thursday evening, she stopped by with groceries I had not asked for and said, "Dad, please don't make tomorrow difficult." I closed the refrigerator and looked at her. What does difficult mean? Ryan needs a chance. He's had a rough year. A rough year financially? Her face tightened. Every small business has ups and downs. How far down? That's exactly what he's afraid of. You turn everything into an audit. That hurt because it was partly true. I spent 34 years as a commercial property appraiser. Numbers were how I understood risk. My wife used to say I could turn a family picnic into a depreciation schedule if somebody left me alone with a calculator. I smiled at the memory, but my daughter did not. "He thinks you judge him because he didn't build his company the way you built your career. I judge a contractor by whether the building stays up." "See?" she said. "That?" I leaned against the counter. "Sweetheart, has Ryan shown you the company books?" "I'm not his accountant." "Have you seen the loan he wants tomorrow?" "He said it's bridge financing." "Have you read it?" She looked away. "Not yet." "Then before you ask me to risk anything, Read what you're asking me to risk it for. She picked up her purse. Sometimes people need family to believe in them before the numbers look perfect. Belief is not collateral, I said. She stared at me as if I had slapped her. Mom would have helped us. I felt that one in my chest. My wife had been dead 4 years, and neither of us used her name carelessly. Your mother would have asked to see the paperwork, I said. My daughter shook her head. You always say that when she can't argue with you. Then she walked out. I stood in my kitchen for a long time after the door closed. That was the moment I nearly canceled the lender meeting and simply sent her the workshop video. But if Ryan had a legal financing plan and had merely snooped because he was ashamed to ask me directly, the video proved an invasion of privacy, not the larger fraud I suspected. More importantly, my daughter had just shown me exactly how the confrontation would go. If I attacked her husband, she would defend him first and investigate later. So I waited one more day. The lender's office sat on the 5th floor of a glass building overlooking the James River, the kind of place designed to make borrowed money feel respectable. My daughter was already in the conference room when I arrived Friday afternoon. Ryan sat beside her in a navy suit I had never seen him wear. Across the table were a loan officer named Miss Calder and a younger man from the lender's risk department. A stack of documents waited in front of an empty chair. Ryan stood and gave me a quick hug. Dad, I appreciate this. I haven't done anything yet. He laughed as though I had made a joke. My daughter did not. Miss Calder explained that Ryan's company had an opportunity to complete tenant improvements for a regional grocery chain. The contract was worth more than $2 million, but his company needed working capital to order materials and secure subcontractors. The lender was prepared to extend $480,000. I asked the obvious question. What secures it? Ryan answered before she could. A combination of receivables and real property. Whose real property? My daughter turned toward him. Ryan kept his voice calm. Dad, this is why I wanted everybody in one room. The duplex gives the lender enough comfort to approve the line. We'd make the payments from the project revenue, and once the job is complete, the lien comes off. My daughter looked at me. The duplex? You told me he might help with collateral, Ryan said to her. You didn't say which property. Because I wanted Dad to hear the full structure before reacting. I looked at Miss Calder. Have I already been listed as a proposed guarantor? Her eyes moved toward the risk officer. Your property is listed as pledged collateral, Mr. Pierce. Did I authorize that? Ryan leaned forward. We discussed it. When? Several times. Name one. His jaw shifted. In your workshop. You said you understood the Cedar Annex provision meant the lender could only move against the duplex after a 30-day cure period. My daughter blinked. The room became very quiet. I did not look at Ryan right away. I looked at the risk officer, because he was already taking notes. Then I asked, what is the Cedar Annex provision? Ryan stared at me. The clause in your property package. Which package? The blue folder. Dad, come on. The one under the compressor manual. My daughter slowly turned toward him. I folded my hands on the table. I never discussed a Cedar Annex provision with you. There is no such provision. There is no Cedar Annex. I wrote those words into a draft and left it in a blue folder inside a locked workshop after someone opened my tax mail and a lender checked my credit without my permission. Ryan's face changed so quickly that my daughter saw it before he could recover. What are you saying? She asked. I took out my phone, but I did not play the video. I'm asking your husband how he knew where that folder was. Ryan pushed back from the table. This is insane. You planted fake papers to test me? I planted harmless papers on my own workbench inside a locked building you had no permission to enter. I had a key. Exactly. My daughter whispered, Where did you get a key? Ryan looked at her. Your dad gave me access months ago. I shook my head. I loaned you my truck. The workshop key was on the ring. The lock showed marks from a bad duplicate a week later. You're building a conspiracy out of nothing. Then the rest should be easy to explain. I turned to Miss Calder. May I see whatever you have with my name on it? She did not hand me the papers immediately. Instead, she asked Ryan, Mr. Cole, did Mr. Pierce sign the collateral consent in your presence? Ryan looked at the document, then at me. He approved it. That wasn't the question, the risk officer said. Ryan swallowed. He knew about it. Miss Calder slid a copy across the table. My name appeared at the bottom beneath an electronic signature mark. Above it was a scanned copy of my driver's license. I had never seen the form. That signature isn't mine, I said. My daughter made a small sound beside Ryan. He reached for her hand. She pulled hers away. You told me Dad had already agreed in principle. He did. Did he sign that? Emily, don't let him turn this into something it isn't. I noticed Miss Calder close the folder. We are suspending the application, she said. Ryan's voice hardened. You can't do that over a family disagreement. This is no longer a family disagreement. The risk officer pointed to the document. We have a disputed guarantor signature, disputed collateral authorization, and a statement from the proposed property owner that he did not submit his identification. Ryan stood. He's confused. He's been forgetting things for months. My daughter looked at him as if the room had dropped 10 degrees. What did you just say? I'm saying your father has been under stress. I felt anger rise, but the anger was almost useful because it made everything clear. Ryan had prepared an explanation for the possibility that I denied consent. Not a business explanation, a competence explanation. I kept my voice even. Miss Calder, before this meeting I notified my attorney and placed an alert on the property title. I also contacted your institution after the credit inquiry. Your fraud department should already have that report. The risk officer nodded slowly. It does. Ryan sat down again. My daughter covered her mouth with one hand. I turned to her. Sweetheart, I need you to hear me carefully. I am not asking you to believe me because I'm your father. I want you to verify every piece of this yourself. Then I played the workshop video. She watched her husband unlock my door, walk straight to the folder, photograph it, and search my file box. Ryan said nothing until the video ended. Then he whispered, I was trying to save us. We left the lender separately. My daughter rode with me because she said she could not sit beside her husband yet. And for the first 10 minutes, she stared through the passenger window without speaking. I did not fill the silence. Finally, she said, How bad is his business? I don't know. You think he's been lying about that too? I think you should find out. She rubbed both hands over her face. You always do that. Do what? Make everything sound like a homework assignment when my life is falling apart. I pulled into a quiet grocery store parking lot and shut off the engine. Then I'll say it differently. I am furious that my son-in-law entered my workshop, copied private records, and presented a document with my name on it. I am terrified that the man you sleep beside had an explanation ready that I'm losing my memory. And I am trying very hard not to tell you what conclusion to reach, because you spent the last 6 years building a life with him, not me. Her eyes filled. Why didn't you tell me when you first suspected him? Because the first thing you did yesterday was defend him without reading the loan. So you tested me too. That landed harder than I expected. No, I said, then stopped because the answer was not entirely true. Maybe a little. I thought if I told you, you might warn him before I knew what he was doing. You didn't trust me. I trusted that you loved your husband. She laughed once, bitterly. That's a nice way to say it. It is the accurate way. She opened the car door but did not get out. I need to know if my signature is anywhere. I looked at her. What do you mean? Ryan had me sign something on his tablet Tuesday. He said it was a spouse acknowledgement for the business line. I didn't read it. I closed my eyes for a second. Call the lender before you call him. She did. Miss Calder transferred her to the risk officer, who verified her identity and then emailed copies of every document bearing her name. My daughter read the first page in the passenger seat. By the second page, she had stopped crying. By the third, she was angry. Her signature appeared on a personal guarantee for $220,000, dated 3 weeks earlier. I did not sign this, she said. Another page listed her income as support for Ryan's company obligations. A third listed the duplex as family-owned property transitioning to daughter upon estate settlement. My daughter read that phrase twice. Estate settlement? You're alive. Last time I checked. She did not smile. He made it sound like you were already halfway gone. I watched her reread the documents. Then she called Ryan. He answered on the first ring. Baby, please listen before your dad gets further inside your head. She put him on speaker. Did you sign my name to a guarantee? Silence. It's not what it looks like. That sentence is getting old. The lender needed a spouse acknowledgement. You were going to sign anyway. Did you sign my name? I was trying to keep payroll going. Did you sign my name? He exhaled sharply. Yes, but only because we were running out of time. She closed her eyes. How much debt is there? We can talk at home. How much? It changes week to week. That is not an answer. His voice rose. Your father has spent his entire life sitting on property while people around him work for every dollar. He could fix this with one signature. My daughter looked at me, and I saw something in her expression break cleanly instead of slowly. So this was the plan? She asked. Use Dad's duplex to cover your company. Use an asset that is doing nothing to protect our future. It houses 2 families. You know what I mean? No, she said. I think I finally do. Ryan shifted tactics immediately. His voice softened. He reminded her of the hospital nights, the trips they had taken, the years he had supported her when her mother died. He said one bad project did not make him a criminal. He said he had been ashamed and scared. Some of that may even have been true. My daughter listened until he said, everything I did was for us. Then she answered, you signed my name for us. You copied my father's key for us. You told a lender he was losing his memory for us. I need you to stop saying us when you mean you. Ryan went quiet. She asked him to email the full company statements, all current loans, tax notices, vendor balances, and payroll records before 6 that evening. Why? He asked. Because if there's still a marriage after today, it will be built on numbers that both of us can see. Your father put that in your head. No, he told me to verify you. Then she hung up. We sat in the parking lot until the air conditioner automatically shut off. Mom would have read the paperwork, wouldn't she? She asked. Every page, I said. And then she would have made me read it twice. This time my daughter did smile, though only for a second. I'm sorry I used her against you yesterday. I'm sorry I let suspicion turn into secrecy between us. She looked at me. Are you sorry you set the trap? No. She nodded slowly. Good. I don't think I'd believe you if you were. That evening my daughter did not go home. She sat at my dining table with her laptop while I made sandwiches neither of us really wanted. Ryan sent documents in pieces. First 3 months of business statements. Then a loan summary. Then an accounts payable report missing 2 pages. My daughter did what I had hoped she would do from the beginning. She stopped asking whether Ryan loved her and started asking whether his claims matched records. By 9 o'clock, she had built a simple list. His company owed $148,000 to suppliers, $56,000 in payroll taxes and penalties, and another $91,000 on short-term business loans. The medical office project he had described as profitable had actually lost more than $200,000. Worse, several newer customer deposits had been used to finish older jobs. Nothing on the page proved some grand criminal scheme. It proved something more ordinary and, to my daughter, more devastating. Her husband had spent nearly a year lying about whether the business was solvent. He had not stolen my property because he wanted a mansion. He had convinced himself that one more infusion of money would repair everything before anyone learned how close he was to failure. At 9:37, Ryan arrived at my house. I saw him on the door camera and asked my daughter whether she wanted me to send him away. No, she said. I want him to answer while I still have the documents open. I let him in but kept us in the dining room. He looked 10 years older than he had that afternoon. His tie was gone. His sleeves were rolled up. Can I talk to my wife alone? He asked. She shook her head. Not in Dad's house. He stared at me. You happy? No. That seemed to surprise him. You got what you wanted. What I wanted was for my daughter not to be married to a man who signs her name. He sat across from her. For the next hour, he admitted most of it. The big contract had gone bad. He had borrowed against equipment, then used credit cards to cover payroll. He hid tax notices because he thought he would catch up. A private lender approached him through a broker and said the company might qualify if he had stronger collateral. Ryan knew the duplex was paid off. He knew I would never pledge it for his business. He told himself he was not taking the property, only borrowing against it. He copied my workshop key when he had my truck. He searched my records to determine whether there were any existing liens. When I changed the lock, he made a second copy after borrowing my spare house keys from the kitchen hook while helping my daughter move a bookshelf. "You planned this twice," she said quietly. Ryan stared at the table. I panicked twice. "And my signature?" "The lender wanted spouse support. I knew you'd say no if you saw how much debt there was. So you made the decision for me. I was trying to protect you from the stress until I fixed it." My daughter looked at me. I said nothing. She turned back to him. "And telling them Dad was forgetful?" Ryan's shoulders sagged. That was only if he denied the conversations. Conversations that never happened. I needed them to believe there had been consent. She stood up. "Then you were not confused. You were building a story around the forgery." Ryan reached for her hand. She stepped away. He began crying then, and I believed those tears more than any apology he offered earlier. Failure had finally become real because the people he had been lying to were no longer participating in the lie. He asked me for one chance. "I can sell the company assets. I can pay down enough debt. If you would just cover the tax lien so payroll doesn't collapse, I can unwind the rest." I almost admired how quickly the old pattern returned. One rescue, then another. I shook my head. "No. You'd let 30 people lose their jobs to prove a point? Your employees deserve the truth from you, not money from me that lets you hide another month. You have the money. That does not create an obligation." His face hardened. "Family is supposed to help family." My daughter answered before I could. "Helping you hide this is what got us here." Ryan looked at her as though she had betrayed him. "You're choosing him. I'm choosing not to sign for debt I didn't create. You're my wife. That is not a blank check." He stood and paced toward the living room. "So what now? You leave me because I made one desperate mistake?" My daughter looked down at the stack of papers. "A mistake happens once. You copied a key twice, opened a locked building, photographed private records, forged 2 signatures, lied to a lender, and prepared to say my father was confused if he caught you. That is a sequence." He had no answer. She told him she would stay with a friend for the weekend and contact an attorney Monday. He asked whether she was divorcing him. "I don't know yet," she said, "but I know I'm separating my finances from yours tonight." Then she froze their joint credit card from her phone, changed the password on her personal bank account, and requested copies of her credit reports while he watched. Ryan looked at me one last time. "You taught her this?" "No," I said. "You did." He left without another word. At the front door, he placed the copied workshop key on the small table beneath the mirror. I waited until his truck was gone before picking it up. It was warm from his hand. By Monday morning, the lender's fraud department had formally canceled the collateral application and referred the disputed signatures for review. My attorney gave them the workshop video, the credit monitoring report, and the timeline showing when I had notified the institution that I had not authorized any borrowing. My daughter hired her own lawyer instead of using mine. That mattered to me. I wanted her advice to belong to her, not become another extension of mine. She also hired an accountant to review the business records, because Ryan had finally admitted the books were too tangled for either of them to understand alone. Within 2 weeks, she learned that she was responsible for less of his business debt than she had feared, though separating everything would still take months. Ryan entered negotiations with creditors and eventually shut down the company rather than continue taking deposits for work he could not finance. Whether the disputed documents would lead to charges was no longer something I controlled, and I decided not to make the story about punishment. The lender and attorneys could handle the legal part. My job was simpler. I changed every exterior lock, moved all remaining property records out of the workshop, kept title alerts active, and stopped leaving identifying documents in places visitors could casually see them. My daughter moved into a small apartment near her clinic instead of moving into my house. I offered her the guest room. She thanked me and said, "I need to know I can stand up without replacing one person's safety net with another." I understood. For years I had thought protecting my child meant making sure there was always a roof, money, or solution waiting if something went wrong. Watching her sign the lease on a place she could afford by herself taught me a harder version of the same lesson. Sometimes protection means leaving enough space for someone to discover their own strength. She and Ryan separated. For a while they attended counseling, not to save the marriage automatically, but to force every fact into the open. He eventually admitted that the first lie about the medical office project had been the easiest one. Once my daughter believed the job was profitable, every later lie existed to protect the first. He said he had reached a point where losing the company felt worse than losing his integrity because the company had become proof that he was worth something. My daughter told him that explaining the fear did not erase the choices. I was proud of her for saying that, though I never told her what decision to make about him. 6 months after the lender meeting, she filed for divorce. Ryan did not fight her over the house because they did not own one. He did not receive money from me. I did not pay his tax debt. I did not buy his equipment. When a mutual friend suggested I could help him start over because he made mistakes under pressure, I said, pressure explains what someone is carrying. It does not give them permission to put it in another person's name. That became my boundary and, eventually, my daughter's too. Almost a year after Ryan walked into my workshop, my daughter came over on a Saturday morning carrying 2 cups of coffee and a small brass key. The workshop door was open because I was replacing the blades on an old planer. She stood in the doorway and held up the key. "You trust me with one of these yet?" she asked. I wiped my hands on a rag. "You've always had a key to the house." That wasn't my question. I looked at the key, then at her. For months after the confrontation, there had been a quiet distance between us. We still had dinner. We still called each other. But she had not forgotten that I suspected something was wrong and chose to investigate without telling her. I had not forgotten that she had defended her husband by using her mother's memory against me. Neither wound disappeared because Ryan was caught. Trust does not rebuild itself simply because one person in the argument turns out to be more right. "I should have told you sooner that I was worried," I said. "You would have warned him." "Probably. That's why I didn't." She stepped inside. "I know, but there's a difference between understanding your reason and liking what it did to us." "I know that too." She placed the coffee on the bench. "For a while I thought the lesson was that I should have trusted you instead of him." I waited. "That's not it," she continued. "The lesson is that I should have checked both of you." I smiled. "Your mother would have liked that answer. She would have corrected the grammar first." I laughed, and for the first time in months the workshop felt like the place it had been before any of this happened. I opened a drawer and took out a fresh key. "This opens the workshop," I said, placing it in her palm. "It does not open my file box, my bank account, my mail, or my decisions." She curled her fingers around it. "Sounds fair. And if you ever want something in here?" I ask. "And if I say no?" She smiled. "Then I decide whether I can live with the answer without turning your boundary into an insult." I nodded. That was all I needed. The blue folder from the trap had been shredded months earlier. The duplex still belonged to me. Both tenants were still there. My daughter was rebuilding her savings and had started reviewing every monthly statement herself. Ryan was working for another contractor instead of running a company, and according to my daughter, he was finally paying down the debts that were actually his. I did not celebrate his collapse. I did not need revenge. What I needed was the thing he had tried to take before he ever tried to take the property. The right to decide what happened to what was mine. My home, my credit, my name, my signature, my trust. Being family can earn love. It can earn patience. It can earn another conversation after a bad day. What it cannot earn is automatic access. The day my son-in-law copied my key, he believed the locked workshop contained the answer to his financial problems. What he found instead was a boundary he thought he could cross without consequence. The trap did not save me because I was smarter than he was. It saved me because I paid attention to a small inconsistency before it became a catastrophe, verified what I could verify, and refused to let love substitute for evidence. That is the part I wish my daughter and I had both understood sooner. Trust is valuable because it is freely given. The moment someone demands it, in place of an honest answer, it stops being trust and starts becoming permission.